Hello and welcome to Film Lovers. I'm Sonia Chung. I'll be talking to people who work in the film industry and who are also avid film lovers. Today I'm talking to Jason and Rachel. They've been on before. Hi guys, how are you?
Hi.
Hi, yeah, not too bad, thanks.
All good.
You
Dear.
okay? Rachel, be careful you don't spill any drinks on Jason's equipment.
No, on pain of death. No.
All right, so what we're going to do today, Jason and Rachel?
I think we're talking about the subculture of adult film.
Yeah, the porn industry. So we're going to have basically a general chit chat. Obviously, we're not going to discuss the films in in full context, but we're going to have a general chat about it. And I thought the best way to sort of start it off is basically because Jason mentioned that he'd done a documentary already, so I think that's a good way to start, and then we can take it from there, really. So, Jason and Rachel, you can give some input as well. And why don't you tell us about the documentary that you did, when you did it, etc. What the purpose of it was, etc., etc.
Yeah, so I shot a feature documentary a few years ago called Life of Fetish, which I'm actually just finishing off to hopefully get a release. It initially came about because distributors were asking for special interest documentaries because they were better sellers than the independent films because the market was swamped. And I had worked with some adult stars on some of my films and actually made an adult film back in 2008, so I was able to get access to some of these people that I convinced to speak on camera and tell their stories. They come from porn films and from webcamming and dominatrix and all in between, really. So it's quite a broad range, full adult industry. And yeah, it's and because obviously of doing horror and porn sometimes cross as well, especially in parody films, and that dates back to the 70s, really. That sort of proper art, classy porn films, as I say.
So, what was the premise behind your documentary film? Did you go around sort of interviewing? Did you have like a beginning, a middle, and end in plan, or did you just sort of have like a synopsis, and you were going to base it around that and then see if it naturally came to an end?
So I wrote a very in-depth interview that I interviewed Kaz B, who is an actress I've worked with for a long time. She's been in many stuff and is an adult performer. And I shot a hell of a interview of her. It's about 2 hours long at least, of her talking about most areas. It was very an expose on everything, probably a lot of stuff people didn't know. And I knew I'd get a lot from her because she was very passionate about the work and film in general, and quite artistic. So we got a really good kind of story, and I did film a little bit of a tour of her gadgets and her stuff, and so it had a kind of beginning, middle, and end. And then I also filmed two other dominatrix, one of them being an actress from porn films who had also acted in one of my erotic films, and she, although they're similar, they have very different takes on things as well, which was interesting. So the film kind of shows different sides, and I managed to get they let me have access to one of their participants who pays to be dommed, and so he actually did an interview about why he does it, and we filmed the session as well, which was interesting.
Yeah. So how many of you were there then filming it? Was it?
It was just me making the film, really. I did have some help from a few crew members at points, but it was primarily me. And I was stood in a corner filming a session. That was part of the deal, that the guy gave an interview to me because he got a free dom session. So I filmed his free dom session with the two women, and they were quite harsh to him. They were stilettoing him in all places, and
really
humiliating him and smacking him about, and dragging him across the floor like a dog.
What's that like to be filming that and witnessing that? I guess was he able to kind of shut you all off, if that makes sense? Or I guess he's too busy.
It was interesting because I've seen a lot from watching and making exploitation films. Not a lot phases me, but did interview the guy, and he turned up and he seemed really quiet and nice and inward, and he wasn't stereotypically an outrageous person at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
He was quite nervous, and then I stood in the corner, set up, ready to film these two girls, and they said he'll come in, and then the door was open, and I looked and I saw him like crawling down the corridor naked like a dog, and I was a bit like surprised because I'd just seen this guy fully dressed, talking very normally. And it was very
Yeah.
very quick turn, and when he crawled into that room, it was like a different person, and
Yeah,
who
yeah, yeah.
he wasn't phased by the camera, and it was like I wasn't there.
It's like
Um,
resigned.
but I mean, he didn't do so much. It was more he was getting abused and humiliated, which is what
Yeah. Well,
he wanted, what he likes. But there was some stuff that surprised me, like he had piercings I never thought he would have had.
really? In
Yeah,
any
like,
interesting places?
yeah, he had his dick pierced.
Yeah.
Which shocked me. Like, I didn't expect that from him at all. He
How
didn't
old
look
was
like
this guy? Age.
middle-aged, like
Okay.
quite a big middle-aged man who was like a businessman, a really unstereotypical person you wouldn't
Yeah,
expect.
yeah.
Well,
Was he suited and booted? When
he
you
was
arrived?
quite well dressed. He was well to do. That's what it was. You would just not
Hmm.
expect that. I didn't. I'm quite open and stuff. He shocked me when he was in that kind of
And that's why you
zone.
don't judge a book by its covers.
No, exactly, Rachel. And also, I guess it's kind of like, well, I guess you just it's kind of like a role in a way, isn't it? You just kind of go into it. So maybe that's why he seemed so different from the beginning when you interviewed him. To all of a sudden, it was like it was another world, basically, wasn't it? That they kind of created between
Yeah,
them two.
it's very like a business transaction. Like once he
Mm.
had that half-hour session, he went into a place that the women took over, and then after that session, snapped back out of it. Was all there, all like well to do, all like having his drink and going like all professionally. So it is like it is like
A
person.
transaction, yeah.
Yeah.
Rachel, did you meet any of them?
No, this was before I met Jason.
Oh,
but
okay.
he's shown me, like, I've watched him edit the footage. He's shown me quite a lot of the details and stuff. So we have talked about it, and he's shown me quite a lot, and there's a lot of very interesting stuff on there. So I'm excited for him to finish it and get it out there, so
Yeah.
that other people can see it, because it is. I find the subject fascinating, what other people do and what they enjoy and all that sort of stuff. And Kaz seems like a really, really nice person, isn't she?
Yeah.
Well,
She's
that's
like
the funny
this
thing, isn't it? Is that I
4
mean, sorry,
I
Rachel.
mean, she's like this tiny little 4 foot something nothing, and she's got the sweet. She's a proper blonde, cute, adorable little Barbie girl, and then she's dominating men as a profession, and she does it so well, and it's so interesting to see.
She's got some
Yeah.
good story.
Yeah, he's told me a lot about it and a lot of
I
stories.
can imagine it, and and I mean, we've spoken about this before, Jason, at some point. I can't remember what it was, but we were saying that a lot of them are able kind of to go in, do their job, go home, and turn off. If you know what I mean, it's just a job for
Yeah.
them. So it doesn't really surprise me that Rachel says that she's a very sort of quiet, small blonde. You never know what goes on behind closed doors, do you? So to the world, like on an everyday basis, they might come across as being a very conventional person, a family person, etc. And then they just go in and do this thing, and then they go home and turn it off. It's just, it is quite interesting. But like I said, we said this before, I think a lot of them are able to separate sex from feelings, and also make it about work. So it really doesn't feel that complicated for them, if that makes sense. Whereas for generally speaking, for humans in general, we tend to get, once you have sex, the emotions come in, and the serotonin and all that kind of stuff. So that's what causes complications. But for some reason, they're able to separate that. So do you think they'd have to be very strong-willed in their sexuality and know exactly who they are in order to be able to do what they do?
Yeah, I think they're very comfortable with their self, and they're comfortable with sexuality, and it's probably hard for a partner to accept.
Mm.
I know people that have had partners that have also been in that industry, and then they've also had partners that haven't been, and but they themselves, they're quite good at distinguishing work and personal life, and
Yeah.
it's very, they'll turn up and do the job on set, and then
Go home
once
and
their job's done, yeah,
yeah.
they would be professional about it, even promote the film. It is very much like you said. It's very much like acting to them. It is very
Yeah,
fake.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
fake world.
I do
I'm
think it's, some people can do it and some people can't. I don't
mm,
think everyone can do that. It does
no,
depend on mindset because,
It's a taboo area. I'll go
it
that.
is,
It
it
is.
yeah,
is. It's funny that you say that because I remember reading, I can't remember, it was an article in a magazine years ago. Um, and it was about couples, um, they asked women, oh, it was the female partner, um, and the male, or they all had different professions, but it was kind of, like the one couple, one of the husband was a gynecologist, so you think a lot of women wouldn't be very comfortable with that. There was another couple who was, the man, the partner was actually a porn star, an adult film star, and his partner, or his girlfriend, was actually a producer on a lot of the films, and she was able to, she was saying exactly what you guys just said, that she was able to switch it off, and it didn't seem to bother her that actually, they're filming her partner, uh, because they're both there to do a job. And actually, from her perspective, I can kind of see, because she's just in charge of, getting everything going, the scheduling and all that kind of stuff, and setting it all up. So I can see from her perspective, but I personally know that I'd have a really hard time seeing a partner do that. But I don't know, Rachel, would you? If imagine if Jason was
I
got into
I
that kind of thing.
I have no judgment for anyone in the adult industry, and I think it's a really tough job to do.
Hmm.
But for me, I wouldn't be comfortable
No.
with it. So I wouldn't date someone in
Yeah.
that industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did know someone from the industry who is a really good friend of mine. Her and her partner, she actually got into it later in life
Hmm.
and very successful. And her partner absolutely adored her, and he used to go to the shoots with her. And he was absolutely, because she was doing it when she met him, and he had no problems with it, trusted her completely. And then as she got older, she was starting to dial it back anyway.
Hmm.
And they'd had a discussion and decided, okay, you can do XYZ, and we maybe cut out the heavy stuff, go with the lighter stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
used to be on like Babe Station and things like that. So
Yeah.
she kind of, as she got older, because she was, when I met her, she was in her 50s and still going.
Hmm.
And and they just had the discussion, but they were both comfortable. He didn't have a problem with it. She was happy. They were madly, and they were like a little teenage couple every time
Yeah.
I saw
Yeah.
them. They all over. And they didn't have a problem with it, and they openly talked about it with us all the time. So
Yeah.
utmost respect.
But
But she's very
I think,
successful.
but that's a good way to go about it. I think you'd have to sort of be very honest about what you're doing from the very start if you had a partner. Do you know what I mean? If you
I
got
do
together a
think,
partner.
yeah, they're definitely honesty and being trustworthy and loyal is part of it, because if you don't have a strong bond or a trusting relationship, you're always going to be insecure about it.
Hmm.
I feel like these people are quite secure individuals. If they have healthy relationships and work in an adult industry, they obviously have the right balance, and
Yeah.
communication and trust with their partners, if their partners trust them in that. But like you
Yeah.
said, it is a business. It is work to them. It's work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'd be like, just going into the office every day. They just happen to be naked in the office every day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really interesting that you say that, because I remember seeing an interview somewhere on, I think it was on YouTube, and it was a famous porn star couple. I can't remember what his name was. He's a Spanish guy, Manuel something, I don't know. But they call them like it was kind of like the sort of like the Brad and Angelina of, it came from, because they met from a film and they actually did fall in love. And then they got married, blah blah blah, and they had kids. So they're like happily married, but then they had a discussion that actually he wasn't because himself felt that he was very jealous. He was very jealous of seeing his partner with other men. So they had that conversation that, when she did shoot, she would only do shoot like, with other women, without being too explicit. So they had that kind of conversation. So that would kind of make sense, because I can understand that for some people that would be difficult to process, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's funny because we also, I remember talking to Jason about this in the Louis Theroux special when we talked about the porn episode in the original one, in Weird Weekends, and then he did like a follow up of it, like in 2014 or something. I don't know if you saw that one, Rachel. I know Jason did.
He has done a few.
I've seen quite a bit of his.
Yeah, the Weird Weekends, the one, it was from the 90s. So it was more kind of quirky, and he kind of follows, he goes behind to see how the industry works, etc. And actually they were talking about how it's a lot harder for men than it is for women, because a lot of them go into it thinking, oh, it's so easy, you go and have sex with beautiful women, but actually it's really hard, because, and we mentioned this before, because they are on a schedule. They're on a schedule.
For a long period of time. Yeah,
and they're on a schedule.
You have to do it on command as well.
Exactly. And you think, generally speaking, when people have sex, it's in private, isn't it? So you're relaxed. You don't have people around you and a time schedule and the producer saying, it's taking too long. Hurry up. So it's very hard. But there was also another aspect which I wanted to talk to you both about, where I remember talking to Jason about the fact that one of the actors in that episode was actually straight, but he was doing gay for pay, which is like quite a common thing now. And the producer of that film, Louis Theroux, was talking to, and he was saying, isn't that really difficult? And he said, yeah, it is, because the producer said, yeah, it is. A lot of guys end up getting quite messed up about it, because they have a sort of conflict with each other, don't they? They'd have to be, he was saying, they'd have to be very, very sure of themselves and be completely comfortable with their sexuality. But I can imagine that would be very, very conflicting, and it would be quite harmful. I don't know. What do you think? I thought that was interesting.
I think it's harder to do that. So if you're a man having gay sex instead of hetero, and you actually are hetero, then that's a harder job and a much harder thing to take on. Not, no pun intended, but it's
I think the funny thing is that, so we get back to it, but I don't think it's so hard for women, though. Does that make sense? Because on some level they're on the same Rachel, I'm trying to think, they're on the same kind of wavelength. Do you know what I mean? But I think
women are more comfortable with other women. There's that feminine safety, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. It's exactly right. They feel more.
The modern.
The guys get a harder time from actual audiences as well, and feedback than women do. I think it's more harsher on the male side. I think they get criticised more, is what I'm trying to buy.
Yeah,
oh, really?
The women seems to be, when it's girl on girl, it always seems to be more accepted.
Where man on man crosses more taboo. It is a taboo area.
It's that kind of that almost like toxic masculine energy. Especially for men as well. It's a bit more.
Well, women on women is very common in porn films. So most porn films actually have a little bit of women on women in the films, in on the web, cam girls, everything. Whereas the man on man is a little bit more. It's out there, but it's pushed more to the side. It's more of a sideline. It's definitely not as mainstream as women on women is. And women on women is been around for longer as well, really. Actually a celluloid film and featured on films. It's pushed more. It dates back to even the 70s films.
Oh, really?
There is so much man-on-man action from that period. It was much more kept in the closet sort of thing, almost.
Even the old the male full frontal nudity is still considered quite taboo. Really? In the 70s, it used to be all about the women, and it used to always be about the front shots and the bush shots and all that. And with men, it didn't used to be too bad. European films aren't too bad,
Well,
but
the UK
the
has
UK is
some
quite
very
strict on it.
strict laws, and it has done dating for censorship,
Oh,
which
Like,
is
you can have as much boob as you want, but don't show a penis. No, that's not allowed.
really?
it's got
Yeah.
easier, but
It's getting there. A
Why
few
is
films.
that? That's really bizarre.
technically hardcore porn is still quite recent in the UK. It's less than 30 years, mid-90s, end of 90s, less than 30 years it's been legalized in the UK.
Okay.
Before then it was illegal, although it was around, it was under the counter job. So
Oh, really?
it's which is another documentary that I have been doing, is actually with Redemption Films. Nigel Wingrove, who runs Redemption, he campaigned against his film getting banned for blasphemy, and that crusade he took against censorship ended up resulting in the legalization of porn films. Although there is a myth, like hardcore porn is only allowed to be sold in sex shops in the UK, and it has to be an 18R rating with a little blue label, which is 18 restricted. You're not supposed to be able to buy it off the internet and get it sent to your house. That's, although people do, that's technically a loophole. It's only supposed to be supplied in the licensed sex shop. England is still very strict compared to other countries. That's why people used to go to Amsterdam and fill their cases up with VHS.
Well, Amsterdam, yeah, it's known for being a bit more kind of, I don't know, I guess open-minded, aren't they? It's easy to get hold of cannabis and things like that. But I agree with Rachel. I think with women and women, just generally speaking, you feel naturally just safer with women, don't you? It's quite, and you just basically kind of on the same wavelength, so you know what's what, and you know that the other one's comfortable with you, etc. Whereas I think men are generally quite kind of guarded around other men. I don't know if that's like a natural instinct of like caveman or anything, or alpha male, or do you know what I mean? But you would feel kind of threatened. I don't know, if someone was kind of coming quite close to you as a guy, they didn't know. I think
there must be a psychological aspect to it as well, because woman on woman, the physicality of it is very different to a man on man interaction. Without going to, don't want to get too graphic and stuff.
Yes, but yeah,
two men, it's a lot more personal. There's a lot more physical interaction with bodily parts.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Women, which I think if you were a straight man doing the gay for pay, I mean, I would certainly find it very difficult.
Yeah, well, that's what they were saying in that documentary, because the producer was saying, well, it does mess with a lot of their minds. A lot of them end up going to drugs or self-medicating and overdosing or killing themselves. So it would be very difficult for them, I'd imagine, and very, very challenging and hard. But there is a question I want to ask: would they get paid more than doing heterosexual sex? Is that why they're doing it?
Yeah, there is a bit more money in it.
Really,
that is part of the temptation to it. And as I said, there is a gay porn star who actually isn't gay, but also
I remember you telling me after that.
he doesn't have penetration. They do a crafty edit, really. He's featured naked. He does stuff. They go to the hardcore shots, and he's replaced. It's like a body double, so he actually doesn't even do it. But the audience, this was a myth that was broken on a documentary. That the audience buy it, they think it's him, but it's all done in close up. So and that broke some people's hearts.
I remember you said he lost a lot of fans.
Yeah, when it come out, it was a bit crafty.
He basically had a body double.
Basically, yeah. So he did everything but that. Because in real life in fact, I think the gay fans didn't even realise he was heterosexual in real life as well. That was a little bit of a secret. They just thought he was this gay porn icon.
Yeah.
Again, like with film, it was very fake. The whole thing is fake. Like
yeah.
Fake. So it's
What happened to him then? Is he still doing that? And is he accepted, or did they have to drop him?
Carried on doing it, but it was quite a few years ago. And the problem with the porn film industry is a lot of people come and go very quick.
Yeah.
You get washed up because once you've done a few films, you're kind of expired. You get a few exceptions. You get, like with film as well, with acting, you get a few performers that become legendary, or that they earn their own little cult. They say they stick around, and or they find a niche or speciality. But so many come and go so quick because
Yeah.
they're always looking for fresh new meat in that industry, and because of the internet and like films are so much more easier to access, then it's even more than ever now that there's so much content out there. They're always looking for newcomers and a catch that they can sell their film to, because in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s, it was a different era. It was actually it was a better industry, for the sense that it was more artistic. There was more actual craft to it. Now it's just chaos out there.
Yeah.
They're watched for reasons and stuff.
I was going to say something and I completely forgot. I was going to say it's what was I going to say? I can't remember. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. I'm just wondering, because in, like, say for instance the 90s, it was all videos, so that's how the actors made their money. And then I'm assuming, how did they make their money? Did they make their money? Was it in the contract, and then the revenue that came back, would that go towards the studio? This is, and also since the internet came along, then that's obviously must have changed everything, because who gets the money here? And do you know what I mean? How do they work that out?
Believe it or not, porn films are the biggest film industry in the world, and they always try everything first. So back in the 70s, it was shot on 35mm film and 16mm, just like Hollywood movies. They were shooting the same as them. And they even had porn theatres in America. Again, UK is a little island that was restrictive. In America, they actually had the porn theatres and the 42nd Street, and they had their own screenings. They still now have their own awards ceremony and screenings.
Oh, I was going to talk about this. Yeah, we'll get back to that in a bit.
They were like a Hollywood system, so the studios were hiring people, then they were distributing them, and they were making a fortune, making more than some of the profitable porn films make more than some of the blockbuster Hollywood films. It's insane.
Wow.
And obviously,
Sex sounds.
with the times when video come out, they were the first to jump on it. They were like, well, this is home entertainment, this is great. So they started shooting on video, and also were releasing on video. And obviously porn films are always more expensive to buy, so you're looking at, like, it's just a lot more dearer to buy that film, so they were making big profits. When video came in, it did change it a bit, in the sense that before video they were quite glossy productions. They were shot on film and looked good, and they normally had some quite good production pieces. Video cheapened it, and they cut costs, and there were still some good ones out there, but they got a bit more, you'd say, like the amateur market coming a little bit. And then again, when DVD come out, they were the first. They jumped straight on the DVD disc market. Still trying to hold that, like, they're making proper films. But when the internet took off, and obviously that opened up a whole new gateway, there was a change that is a bit unfortunate. That there was a lot of these crap websites. I say crap, but a lot of websites with little video clips and home videos and that, and it kind of lost a little bit of the traditional filmmaking, which is still around. There are still those films, but also there is just so many, like, 10-minute videos, half-hour videos, people submitting amateur stuff in, and that's flooded the market. And what that's done as well is that has actually made people lose a bit of pay. So some of these old performers used to be a little bit more like specialist in their game. Now they're up against, the girl next door making only that thing.
And no, it's interesting you said that, because it made me think that when Louis Theroux did his follow-up, it's on BBC iPlayer, actually. So when he did his follow-up, he talked about this, the transition between video and internet. That's when a lot of the, I want to say, celebrities, the big ones in the 90s, that they really want. Like, one of them was John Doe, wasn't he? He really suffered because there was just no more work, or the, like you said, the what do you call it, the the field was just like fluctuated with all this other stuff going on. And obviously, you know, that's the only way he was making his money, and he had a family, he had to support them. So it kind of broke him, which I think it would do if you're a man and that's the only thing, you know, that you're good at, to all of a sudden not be able to do because, you know, there's all this other stuff going on the internet and it's free. You know, nobody needs
There's
to
a
buy
really
it.
good film that looks at that, Boogie Nights. It,
Oh,
it
that's a good
shows you
film.
the transition from 70s to 80s of film to video and the decline of it. And it's a really good film that actually kind of summarizes that industry and shows
Yeah,
the
yeah. God, it's been so long since I've seen that film, but that is a really good film. So what happens? Like the 70s is like the big. It's all
golden
glamorous.
age, and they're shooting film, and then the producers want them to move to videotapes as cheaper. There's the whole argument where he goes, "I'm a filmmaker, not an amateur," and then it shows the decline, and they go into a car with a video camera, and they're trying to film it, and it's all very cheap, and director gets pissed off. And it's a great film because it just shows the battle that there was a lot of. The new film X actually also highlights this, the
That was a
Ty
great
West film.
Oh,
It
okay.
highlights that they're making a porn film in the 70s on film. They're making a proper film, but it's pornographic.
It says, what is it? It says you can make a dirty film.
Art, he's still
Art,
making
yeah.
art. And Mark Commode spoke about this. And again, I like a lot of these films. There were some epic exploitation films that are still great films to this day, which started out from the hardcore industry, including Abel Ferreira. He did Nine Lives of Wet Pussy and then went on to have a career, mad
Yeah.
career, working with Harvey Keitel with Bad Lieutenant and Driller Killer. But his roots, like, you know, there's some crazy filmmakers that have rose from those ashes, but
Yeah.
it's changed so much now.
And actually, it's funny because you said that, and it just made me think. A lot of, you know, big celebs now, you know, when they were back in the day when they were struggling and they're poor, a lot of them did porn, didn't they? Like Sylvester Stallone was one.
So yeah.
And Tracy Lords is a whole different kettle of
I
fish.
think Jackie Chan apparently did at the very beginning, and that was a big kind of taboo because obviously now he's like, you know, Mecca, but a lot of them did, and I think Cameron Diaz did. Leonardo, I'm not sure if Leonardo's no, he got that other film, that low budget film. He went to court over, so it couldn't be shown everywhere. I can't remember- What was it called? Do you know, Jason, what I'm talking about? It was a really sort of low art house film. I can't remember. He was really young.
There's a few films that celebrities have tried
But
to
yeah,
kind of
and they
themselves from, or some have even taken action to try and even remove themselves from.
yeah. But you know what? And also, without getting too into it and explicit, there's been this kind of culture all of a sudden where it's kind of like ooh, the celebrities has their sex tape on the internet. Do you know what I mean? So and you do kind of wonder, was it really leaked or was it done as a publicity stunt? Do you know what I mean? You can kind of I wonder if that does actually happen, because then also that raises their profile, doesn't it?
How Kim Kardashian got famous.
Well, that's exactly how
Look
Kim
at the One Night
Kardashian.
at Paris. That was released on DVD and made a fortune. It
They
made
were
a fortune. You know, the One Night in Paris DVD. It came out on DVD. That was probably one of the most profitable things that she's ever got.
Yeah. And there was
involved
a
with.
famous one where I think there's like a series on Disney at the moment, where basically these two actors are playing Pamela Anderson and Tommy
Pam and
Lee.
Tommy.
And there was that whole big thing in the 90s. I mean, I didn't even know about it because I was a teenager, but where there was a sex,
I remember it,
ridiculous sex tape, and apparently it did actually get leaked, but they had no control over I can't remember what, you know, of of banning it or whatever, and it just and they got no money back from it whatsoever. I can't remember how that happened, but I
I
think
don't think it damaged their careers, to be honest.
no. I think it was quite a complicated legal procedure that went through. They had to go through the court and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because at the moment Pamela Anderson's really not happy with the film and what Disney done. Because
Is she not?
She never wanted that to be a thing. She wants to forget about that part of her life.
Yeah. Well, now she's a mum, so you can kind of understand.
Yeah,
she's
not the same person she
No, of
was.
course not. No, and
She
none of us generally are. You know, there's a big difference between 20s and 40s, 50s. But yeah, she's got two grown-up sons, so I'm sure she wouldn't want them to see it.
That's the other thing. I was looking at a thing about this where performers from the 70s and 80s, their content was controlled. So if they was in a film at that time, that film was only released to limited audience in limited ways. Obviously now, and they could kind of move on in life, almost have a family, or kind of leave that part behind them. But now, if people do stuff and it's online on the internet, it's with them forever. Like the way the
Yeah.
world's gone, like, so they can never move on. They're always going to be remembered for that.
No.
It's always going to be accessible. Once something's on the internet, it's hard to get it removed because it gets shared past file pillar to post. You'll never get that like that.
It's funny you say that because I met a model and she's an adult performer. Oh, your door opened up. You're right there, Rachel. What was I going to say? And she was actually an adult performer, and she said that once a woman came running up to her in the shop and said, it was a woman said she saw her do MILF and Young shoot on the internet or something in a supermarket, and you're like thinking that, like, but that would make me feel so nervous because you're like, who the hell is watching this? And it's free and it's out there, and it just terrifies me. Do you know what I mean? Because once you make a mistake, you kind of, all right, that was hard, blah, 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 and you eventually you move on and put it behind you. You can't put that behind you because it's always there. Do you know what I mean? And it's the funny thing is, I mean, I won't talk about it because it's nothing to do with it, but it's a bit like the Will Smith slap thing, isn't it? You know, that's always going to be on the internet. So he'll never be able to really live that down, will he?
Tonight he won his first Oscar. Yeah, what a way to be remembered.
I know. But anyway, I do kind of wonder if that was set up, but I actually don't think it was. I think it was quite genuine, but we'll move on from that because it's nothing to do with this conversation. Do you think there have been instances where, for instance, stars from porn stars from the 70s moved on to have families, etc.? They've been caught out at some point. I remember, but there was one of them in the follow-up that Louis Theroux did, and I can't remember her name. Tia something. She was like Asian, Oriental model.
I mean, I think with most porn stars, it'll always catch up with them. It's hard to hide it.
She was saying because she was a single mother. She was saying that she was a single mother, and she broke up with her partner for whatever reason, and she had a little girl or boy, so she had to enroll her daughter or son, I can't remember, into nursery school. And obviously the nursery school, you know, has to do a background check on the parents and ask, you know, what did he do? And they found her on the internet, and she was like this. So I can imagine that would be so awful. You know, that's like, you know, for that to sort of come up.
If you were trying to get out the industry and go into a different kind of job, like you would struggle being a teacher or a police officer or anything like that after being in the industry like that, because people would use that against you, and it's seen
there's some documentaries. There's a documentary called Life After Porn, which is interesting because it shows different perspectives. I mean, again, some people embrace it. They're proud of their legacy and they will embrace it. But obviously there are others who they kind of mature, they grow older, and they kind of change their outlook, and they do want to settle on families, and that is something there which haunts them, and they can't escape it. Sometimes it's probably, you know, you can't really hide your past, and so if you hide it, it's probably worse because people find out. This is the decision that I don't think people realise. They rush into things. This happens with film as well. I know actresses that have done horror films and that, and they have a change of heart. Years later, they decide they want to do something completely different with their life, and they try to remove that, and they can't, because once a film's released and out there, it's out of anyone's control. It's out. You know, and obviously they've been in it and participated legally, and you know, technically it's a job, a transaction. So
usually contracts have been signed.
So they're stuck. They've got to live with. They've done that. So, but yeah, I think there's a bit of, I think the generation now, there's a lot of young people that run into it, particularly women, because it's a quick, easy buck at the time, and they want that money and be independent. But then, they've stained themselves with something they will never escape from. Ever. Well, you know, someone will find it at one point in their life. You know, it's bound to.
I remember talking to a filmmaker, one of my early episodes, and she said that a lot of them, not so much the men, but the women can go on to be very successful afterwards. Like they might be end up being directors instead, for instance. So is that quite common? More of the women where they have a longer shelf life, because you were saying, and actually it's a bit like the modeling industry, isn't it? Because they have a very very short shelf life. So are the women more successful in that the fact that they can continue working in the industry but not in that field, but doing something else like behind the scenes or directing or producing, for instance? Is that quite common?
Some, I mean, there's a few female porn directors. It is more of a niche market. It's quite male-driven filmmaking wise. There are some females, but it's unusual because it seems to be more of a male-dominated thing. But yeah, there's more female performers. But some of these female performers are quite clued up and clever, and they'll find a niche to them. They'll
Yeah.
find, because there's so many fetishes now, they will find a fetish, concentrate on that, become known for that, and then their shelf life is prolonged because they're a specialist at something, whatever it'll be, and that keeps them going longer than an average, normal in and out kind of porn actor, and that, so they can have, and the shelf life they have is extended. Obviously, their income's extended. They make money from that, and they normally become pretty cushy from that niche. But it's a dark industry. I mean, that's the glamorous side. I know some real life horror stories and my involvement in it, that
Yeah.
there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of abuse, there's a lot of mental health, and there's a lot of issues that go on. Half of the people are pretty much destroyed mentally, and they are a shell of their inner self. There is a proper dark side to it, but there is levels of it. There are what I would say the prestige art porn cinema, then you've kind of got your exploitation, and then you go all the way down to this crazy bedroom backyard crap, and there's, yeah, I mean, if you're gonna at least do it, I'd probably do it on a professional level. There is some crazy stuff that goes on out there.
Yeah. And then at least it's kind of being monitored, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
Isn't it? Professional.
it's also, it's a hard market. Believe it or not, it is actually a hard market as a filmmaker. I mean, performing's one thing that is a bit more straight-laced to get into. From a filmmaking point of view, it's actually quite hard to get one released, because it's actually, again, it's like a Hollywood system. It's a circle of people that kind of run it, and it's quite an inward circle. And unlike Hollywood, which has also got its own problems, this is a little bit criminally run. It's a bit underworldly. It's a bit gangstery run. There's lots of drug money and stuff in it, and they're not the kind of people you want to deal distribution deals with, but they are the people that run it. I did speak to a distributor once, who was offering a deal about doing 4 films a month, and the money they would give and releasing them. And obviously they would have the hardcore and softcore. Normally you have 2 cameras filming. One's filming the hardcore and stuff, one's filming soft. So in the softcore, back when physical media was better, softcore could be released in HMV, it could be released as an 18, you'd be able to get it from Virgin Megastores at the time. But this distributor had their door kicked down with gunmen from the mafia threatening them, and he still carried on. This was a father and son. They'd been threatened, they had guns, they were fighting other distributors, and they're not like, it's not like the boutique labels that these are serious wars. They you tread on their turf, and they don't take kindly. So there is some it's a strange one.
Actually, the funny thing is, because we were talking about that, you said something, it made me think. There's been a very recent one from Louis Theroux. He's done quite a few of them, I think. He did the original in the 90s, and then he did the follow-up one in like 2014, and he's done recently another one, but the other one that he did recently was more focused, which was quite interesting. I want to talk to you both about, was, obviously in Hollywood standard, in when it all broke out, the Me Too movement, then it broke out in the porn industry. And that has some horror stories, doesn't it? Because I actually think, well, it would happen in the porn industry as well, wouldn't it? I mean, that
Rod Jeremy came under fire pretty
yes,
much.
yes, he was one that came up, and one of the models was saying she was like a big one, a big celeb, and she said that she was in tears. She was like saying, "Well, this shoot was meant to be." She was told it was meant to be, what was involved, etc. And he basically just ended up raping her, and that was nothing. He just felt like he could. That was it, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry," but actually there was no call for it because that wasn't what the film's content was meant to be. So yeah, exactly like you said, he came under fire, and he's been scrutinized, and he's in court for several cases of abuse, isn't he? And he was a
Yeah,
bit in the 70s as well, actually.
I mean, apart from the early 70s films and the odd big one, they're not ran like uh, and other film sets. They cut a lot of corners. They don't have as many people involved, and they certainly don't have ads looking after you like that. And so I would say cast are a bit more vulnerable on these conditions because they throw the rule book out the window a bit, and it is a lot about money to them. It's I love the old golden era age. I like some of the big films now. I myself have done stuff and managed to get released in the States and that, but it's such a big market and
Yeah,
such a big pond of a films out there.
yeah.
There's a lot of horror stories on
Well,
these
no,
sets, which
it's
are
funny that you say
interesting.
that because if you go on YouTube, you have these videos from ex porn stars, and they all talk about like the dark side of porn, and most of them are like completely, well, they were very broken people, though. Do you know what I mean? But then there's a big contrast. Like you get ones that are obviously very comfortable in their sexuality, and they come from very good family backgrounds, etc. So they're able to do that. And then you got the complete opposite, where you hear, like you said, these horror stories. And I think it's generally like, well, the men have a hard time too, but it's more the women are more kind of vulnerable, I guess. But
Yeah.
would there be cases, do you think, where they're pushed, or they say, why don't you do this, why don't you try do this, so kind of pushing them to do something a higher level than they're not comfortable with? Would that go on quite a lot, or are they quite sort of good with that now?
Um, it's 50-50. So
Yeah,
some sets and some people will push and get the most they can. There are some respectable ones out there. It's the same with indie film. Like all of
yeah,
the,
yeah,
it is the same. It is kind of choosing who you work with wisely and what shoots you're on, but you're always kind of going to get people that push. And the problem is, it's like with film, everything's been done. So if you're making an adult film now and you want to sell it and stand out, then man, you got to go to the kind of ends of the earth to do something original these
mm,
days. Everything's been done, and anyone can see anything at the end of a keyboard on the internet now. Really, to be honest, so I must admit, it's harder than ever to be original and to make money is actually quite hard.
well, how
You've
does
got
the porn industry make the money now? Because I'm assuming now that it's just the actor can do it themselves, really. Now they've got all these webcam things going on and stuff.
they've
So
got competition. I know men can do it, but I do think it's easier for women to do this. Where and some of my colleagues do this, so they webcam and they make quite good money from that, where people pay for private views, and they actually make their own films exclusively for them. So it's like someone can ask them to make a movie of a fetish specifically for them and them only. So it's like a one of a kind film,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
people pay money for that. Obviously, if you can find the right clientele that have got the money, that's great. Um, People are willing to do that because it's specifically for them, rather than them sitting there watching a film that everyone else is watching. They're getting like a special, unique content.
Custom
It
background.
is crazy because my documentary explores this. That some men get really attached to a girl. So if they become a client and they get a few webcams or even sessions being done, they kind of get an attachment, which is this is a dodgy area, and I have spoken
Ah,
about this on my documentary. But some men still they get this attachment where they keep going back and keep wanting it, to the point one of them did break into her house and she went into her bedroom and he was just stood there and she freaked and had to get the police. But it doesn't happen a lot, but it can get to that level. So, so women can make the money because if they get a few clients that have the money, they will keep buying and
And
wanting
they'll
more
keep coming
content.
back. Yeah.
So they can make money that way. Porn sites are obviously massive, where there's low, they're massively hit and search, so they get a lot of ad revenue. There's a lot of adverts on porn sites. So
Okay.
they sell a lot of advertising. You get a lot of people. They'll give you the free bits, and I think a lot of people subscribe or they'll pay extra to see the harder and more
Yeah.
content, like with streaming, like with Amazon Video, like buy or rent it. It happens a
Yeah.
lot. So it's still a big money making scheme.
Some people like the higher quality videos.
It'll always be out there. There'll always be porn. It'll always
Yeah.
be money making. But they to be honest, they move with the times quick and they are adaptable, because they even did 3D porn when 3D was a thing. No doubt there'll be the 4K coming. And, they've been on it all, man. Like
Yeah.
any format, they're on it.
Yeah. But and actually, I wanted to talk to you about, because you said it, and I was going to talk about it, but completely forgot. So I'm glad you mentioned it earlier. Is the porn industry does actually have like award shows, doesn't it? And this is what I really want to talk about, because I saw there's a clip on YouTube, and it's over like I can't remember his name. It's that Spanish guy again, Manuel something, and he's accepting Best Performer of the Year, and he's dressed up in a tuxedo, and he's like giving a speech, and he's really, really like quite emotional, and and like a normal Oscars, if you won Best Actor, Best Film, and it's quite funny, because you're like,
there is some crazy films out there that win it, as in some people put their heart and soul into these productions. It depends how far down the rabbit hole you want to go, because there's a lot of parodies of big films made into porn films.
I know we talked about it's like Saving Private. Was it like Saving Ryan?
Oh yeah, Saving Private.
Yeah, they're very good at marketing that, aren't they? As soon as the film comes out, there was Goodwill Humping, apparently.
Yeah, there's loads. There's Evil Head,
they're very good at doing
this, Wet Dream on Elm Street. There's but like some of the films that win the awards, like there was one. It's going back a few years, but they actually shot it on 35mm again. Took it really seriously. These are 2 to 3 hour epic films with sets, with cast. I mean, there's a sci-fi one with spaceships, and they do a CG. They do a bullet time cum shot where it comes and it goes into make it come around. I mean, these are pretty.
Okay, why haven't I seen this?
I've got it. These are like budgeted, proper, like epic films. They're more budgeted than some indie films. They're insane. So they're when you hear these awards and that, they're impressive. Like some of the films are impressive. You take the porn out, and there's a story, there's acting, there's gunfights and fighting. There's all sorts of stuff going on, and there's Porn of the Dead, the Texas Vibrator Massacre. These are, they're quite epic.
So do they also give out like awards for like best film of the year? Would that happen?
Yeah, they get best film, best director, best performer. Literally, it's like an Oscars.
It's so funny, isn't it? But they really take it seriously. Like it's. But then I guess for them it is serious, because it's their profession. But the way he's just kind of standing there, like in his tuxedo, and he's just like, and he's like close to tears, and it's just really bizarre. And they have like a red carpet as well.
There's some good films that I don't know, because they're porn films, they're a little bit hidden, but there's some hidden gems out there. There is some hidden gems.
Yeah. And with the parodies, like of a film that's just come out, and they end up doing a parody, would they tend to keep the same characters from the actual mainstream film, or would they have references to it, or would they sort of alter it to make it work in there? They're very clever, actually, aren't they? With the way they make it fit into the scenario.
Yeah, they take they completely rip the storyline and characters off. Like a Wet Dream on Elm Street has Freddy Krueger, and he's got vibrator dildos as instead of knives on his glove. And he's got the hat, the sweater, the burns. I mean, they even do the storyline of him getting burnt down in the nursery.
I was going to say, Rachel. Yeah, no, you're right. I was going to say exactly that. Would they ever get done for copyright and taken to court?
Some of them are officially like licensed.
Okay.
Things. I mean, they they change it a bit. It's
I
a
think
grey
they're
area.
scared of the porn industry
Yeah, I
because
don't
they
think
probably have more money than them.
Yeah,
they.
yeah.
I mean, like the triple exorcist is the exorcist. The priest's going into the room with Reagan, who's obviously older, older Reagan. But it is like, you could almost play the film side by side. It's
Yeah,
sort of but they're inventive.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
it's
and
very
they
cleverly
released it.
marketed, isn't it? I mean, imagine that must be quite interesting for the marketing team to be able to.
There's not like there is a market out there of collectors as well, like myself as film collectors. For instance, you get a 2-disc ultimate edition of a film. The Triple Exorcist has a 2-disc special edition with 3 edits of the film, a feature-length documentary, deleted. It's like a package proper, like related. The same with other ones, like the Blu-ray of Texas Vibrator Massacre has a feature-length documentary on it, has all the extras and trailers and gag reels, and yeah, they're very serious about it. So
Yeah.
legit, it's legit stuff.
Um,
Although Texas Vibrator Massacre is banned in
that's
the
such a
UK.
good title.
They banned it because they thought it was too the sexual violent element. The BBFC is still a bit nervy, and that's why it got outright banned. They
Yeah,
won't
yeah.
accept that one.
That's so funny, isn't it? But it is quite interesting how some are so funny as well when they make very explicit films. But they can have like comedy ones. And
Yeah, I think they're all comical. I mean, you shouldn't laugh, but instead of a chainsaw, he has got a one of those,
It's a
like
vibrating
it's
poker.
a jackhammer with a dildo at the end of it with a backpack on, which is run off of like petrol, where he starts it. Which they built that and they were going to use it. And the actress got pissed because they actually started it up, and she says,
She's like, no way.
That's quite inventive, I thought, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. I remember Jason saying in another episode about how adult performers, when they try transition into the film industry, and go into acting, which is not obviously in the porn industry, then they actually have like another stage name. And he said that can get quite complicated because they have a name for their porn career, and then they have another name for this, and that can get quite complicated in the credits kind of. And what about if they're, for instance, if they're in a horror film, like you said, Jason, but they're playing their porn persona, would that be listed on IMDb as their porn persona or as the actor persona? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, they do. IMDb lists all their names, like, so they're known as names and their aliases, so it gets
Okay.
put together. And it is a fun transition because some porn performers do go into the indie horror scene, and obviously indie horror scene likes that because they've got a following anyway.
Well,
And
Ron Jeremy's in a few mainstream
well, he is
films.
before he went to prison.
Yeah.
But porn and horror go hand in hand. So an indie horror film loves a porn star because one, it brings an audience. They'll publicize that person's in it.
Yeah.
It'll probably have like erotic scenes in it, and then
Actually, that's a good point, because it would bring people in, wouldn't it? If it was a high performer, a well-known.
I've seen a few indie horrors that have had porn stars in where they've made a big deal about it as well, and it is almost their transition into. It's happened to me. I did a film which was supposed to be a lot more mainstream, and one of my stars was a porn actress who was known as a porn. She had a porn name, a dominatrix name, and her real name, which she wanted to use her real name for acting, and it was an exploitation film and stuff was going to be simulated, but she did have trouble transitioning because she started going around asking my actors for their certificates, meaning like their STD certificate checks. My other actors freaked because they didn't realise she was a porn star, asking what the hell's going on. I said, "Oh, don't worry, it's just right." And she went into porn mode. So,
did she?
when she's supposed to be getting violated, she goes into porn mode and is like enjoying it and getting all dirty and filthy, and it's really hard to. It's like
you're not supposed to be enjoying that, love.
Yeah,
like
yeah. I can see that would happen because you're like, this is your porn hat, this is your horror film, your film hat.
She goes into
Don't get them confused.
it happens with theatre performers. So people that are used to theatre, they come on a film set and they like shout and project, and you are like, who are you talking to? Like they're doing a close up and they're projected to the back of the room. Like, it's not theatre, you know. And it's the same with porn
Yeah.
stars. It's theatre and porn stars. You have to calm them down.
Like,
But that's
They
the
need to
thing.
be brought down.
Is that I went to drama school actually, so it's interesting that you say that. And there's a big difference between acting for film and acting in the theatre. So, like you
Yeah.
said, theatre, you can be more
They
bigger
over.
expressions. You can move more, whereas on the film you got a camera on you, so it's a lot more to do about facial expressions, and like you said, you have to calm it down. So there's a big difference, and you get that in music, don't you? You get singers or bands who are really good performing live, but they might not be very good at actually recording. And then you get good recording artists that don't do well on stage. And there have been several cases like that. I remember talking to someone about this when I was a teenager. And that happens quite a lot. So there is a big difference between, this and this. So that wouldn't surprise me at all. So what happened to this woman then that you said you had to calm down, you're not supposed to enjoy it, you're going to the wrong way, the wrong mode?
Yeah, no, we got it all done. I worked her. It's the hardest film she's ever done. She went through hell. So
Did she?
she's done the craziest of porn, but found my film the most challenging. So that speaks a lot about the indie film.
Was there a point when she clicked and she went, "Oh, sorry, I went." I said, "I forgot what I was doing."
No, she thought I was more dark and twisted than anyone she's worked with. It was
Oh,
a horror
really?
film, like rape and that. And she goes, "Oh, you're like me. You're extreme." So yeah, apparently I was.
You're
But she actually did my documentary as well. I reunited with her 10 years after the film to do the documentary. So,
is she nice?
she actually has had a child. She's had a kid, but she still does dominatrix. But she's kind of she stayed in the industry, but found a niche. Because she's a dom, that is her niche, and she's got a clientele for it, and she does well for herself. Actually, she does do well for herself. There's some bizarre experiences. Like when I was doing a documentary, I went into a dungeon. They have this there's a house that they have just for clients, and it's the dungeon house. So I went into one of the rooms, and there's this big lit up glass display cabinet. And I was like,
I've
wow, look
seen,
at it.
to be
And it's
honest,
all
I've seen
dildos and glass dildos. I was like,
I've
wow.
seen things like this because every now and then I do a bit of modelling, and I went to this little studio, and the owner was this really nice woman, but actually on the side, she ran this studio, and on a side job, she was a dominatrix. So she had like a dungeon, and she used it in her studio. So if anyone wants to do a shoot in there, they can. And then she had this cabinet of weird things like dildos. There were handcuffs. There were all kinds of like swords and knives and everything. It's just like, just go in, use it if you want.
Yeah, I was admiring the collection while I was waiting for him getting ready, thinking, wow, like it was elaborate. There was some really
Yeah. I should
like,
emphasize that we didn't use any of that stuff.
Yeah, this was like the display. It's like all my film figures on display. It was probably like all set out. It was pretty.
It must be
insane.
very interesting and sort of like overwhelming. So you want to be quite curious, wouldn't you? And say like, "What's this? What's that?"
Weirdly, I knew a lot of stuff. When I was talking to the actresses in the cast, some of these women are a bit like, I know too much. Because that's years of growing up into film and dodgy films and collectible weird and wonderful imports and being members of clubs and stuff. So yeah, I was educating some of my cast and crew about things, which is why I was looking at the documentary, because I was doing the interview, and I put them on the spot because I asked a lot of awkward questions. I did a bit of move through on it, and I might leave some of the awkward bits in where you can see him looking at me, thinking, "You bastard."
You're not
It's like, no, that was an awkward question. I asked her. I'm probably going to get myself shot when it's released, because I have asked some really like awkward questions about. We were saying about the man on man, saying no, it was there's a big thing some of these girls are into, and that's pegging.
Yeah.
And they peg the guys. And I asked the question that if the guy goes to pay you to put a strap on and do him, does that just not make him gay? And I tell you what, all the actresses, they find that really hard to answer.
Really?
Yeah, because I said, isn't that like, it is a bit, I'm just
Yeah. Yeah, and I can imagine that all kinds of Rachel, what's your take on that? I'm not going to judge anyone.
I just think it's ironic that the men's G-spot is in that particular position.
Yes,
So,
I can see what you mean.
I don't think me personally, I don't think it makes him gay. I just think that it's funny.
Well, I've got a fun job because I asked for some cutaways to use in my documentary, and so I got sent a load of material because some of these people film and make home movies for use, and part of the thing, and I got permission to get loads. They sent me them, and they are so graphic. It would be banned, so I have to think about blurring and framing shots and see what I can do with that. Because sometimes I will say some of these people are a bit out of touch. They're so into it, they forget I can't show some of that on a rating or a mainstream film. I just can't use that material. I have noticed that, like when I did my exploitation film with the actress, they kind of forget I've got to be careful with my shots and what I'm doing, because back when I did that in 2007, I shot one that I couldn't get away with some of the. It's still it got into trouble actually. Yeah, it got it did get censored anyway in the end.
Yeah,
and it recently got released. Yeah, and it recently got released.
He gets banned from everything.
Does he really?
The release that come out the other year still had a cut version, which I didn't know about until it come out. I think it's like 4 minutes cut out of it. So
it's the Canadian one.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw your trailer for the latest thing on YouTube, and to be honest, I couldn't handle it. That was just a trailer, and I was like, oh, it's a bit awkward.
That video was for Colour of Red.
I can't remember what it was for. It was like a recent upload on YouTube trailer.
I've done a few.
Was there a woman in the bar?
I can't remember. I think it was quite late at night, and I was like this. Oh, I can't really handle this right now. So I tried watching it, but I will watch it, but when I'm in a bit more of a better mind frame, or maybe in the daytime as well.
I've took you on some interesting shoots, haven't I?
Yeah.
Have you? What was that like, Rachel?
Well, I'm all for it. I mean, I'm quite happy to get stuck in. When we did Visions of Filth, that's an interesting one because one of the actors, he's quite renowned for always being pretty much naked the entire time, and is very good at what he does. And we did a scene in particular where he's in the bath and he's basically emptied his bowels everywhere, not for real, but I did all the props for it, and I think the most memorable moment is me smearing Nutella on his private parts for him. So,
actually, it's funny because you wouldn't think about stuff like that happening, but I imagine there would be a prop person on the set, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I made Nutella poop.
Well, I was thinking, I took you on the gay.
Which one was that one?
Where there was actual gay sex happening.
Oh, was that with Martin? Yeah, no, we could. It doesn't faze me because I'm not really bothered by stuff like this.
Yeah.
He was my assistant, and I was the DOP on a short film that actually was pornographically gay with oral sex and stuff happening.
In the Airbnb?
Yeah, but so it was X-rated content. It has actually been released in America as well. It's in America. It's got an uncut release, but there was there's a few films we were doing back-to-back shooting, but one of them, they actually faked one bit, and they were faking a cum shot. So I thought I'd get. So I literally, as the DOP.
Yeah.
I was laid down by this guy's privates. I'm by his privates, literally
like this far away,
almost touching my face. So I'm filming upwards, looking at the guy's mouth going in there.
I'm filming him with my phone.
And the makeup artist was on the other side, where she had a syringe.
Yeah.
With,
well, Martin had the syringe.
Oh yeah, Martin had but the makeup artist was the other side helping him, and he had Gaviscon in a syringe, which was supposed to look like come to shoot out. And we had this. I mean, really, it was a one-take wonder because once he shot this, it'd be hard to reset. So I'm like, right, but he was like tossing and getting into character, but because he was in character really aggressive, I was waiting for it. I knew he was going to like shoot in his face, but he got so aggressive. He blew this syringe and it shot out, and it just hit me in the face. It was in my eye. It was in my ear and mouth. And
he got himself in the eye.
And I must admit, when I was looking, because the angle was real and he was doing real stuff with his hand, I thought it was real. So when it happened, I thought the guy had exploded on my face. And I was like, I actually thought, what the hell's going on? And my eyes started burning because it's Gaviscon. I didn't know what was going on. And because he was acting and it hit him in the face, he was still acting, but it was such a realistic act. I actually was like, oh man, it's just like really good. Being professional that I was, I stayed on the shot until it cut, and then thankfully I realised it was Gaviscon. And I mean, I was like covered, my kit, my face, my eye burnt for the rest of the night filming that.
So you're okay now.
Yeah, no, that was
actually, yeah, that's funny because you think that must happen quite a lot. Lots of funny sort of stories from props people. Would there be like an art department and a props person on the set?
On the bigger ones,
on a set designer.
On the big films and the parodies, they do.
Makeup artist, wardrobe. What the wardrobe there is.
Oh, no, sometimes elaborate.
Yeah, on the bigger sets you certainly have it, or sometimes you get a couple of people do a lot of roles. Like when I go on shoots with Jason, I do a bit of makeup, bit of props, a bit of AD, a bit of everything, just to help.
Well, I about funny stories is I made a film called Naked Nazi, which is a XXX film that come out in the States, and I'm in it. I am an actor in the film as well, but I didn't. I'm in an erotic scene, but I didn't perform sexually. But
you'd be like Louis Theroux's Walking.
His bit was
mine was a bit more bigger. I played the detective rookie cop in it.
He got tied up to the bed.
Well, yeah. So being the filmmaker, there was a few of us, and someone else was going to shoot this scene, But I spoke to the actress who is a dominatrix in real life, and this is what the point is they it's hard with them. I said this is fake, like so. This scene, you don't have to really abuse me. I'm supposed to be tied up to the bed because she captures me, ties me to the bedpost, and I was really restrained and really cuffed. And I realised, looking back, I'm not very comfortable with being restrained. Actually, I don't know. I put myself in. And she undoes my shirt and rips my shirt open, and is supposed to be kind of being erotic and abusing me, and then she's distracted before it. But I said, but all this is fake, yeah, because she had a whip and stuff. I said, don't really hurt me, don't, it don't have to be fake. So the next thing is, I'll get handcuffed up. I'm in position. I call the action. And because she goes into dominatrix mode, I'm not one of these people that likes to be dom. And then I feel it straight away. Her hand hits my chest with her nails. I'm like, and she scratches down. You can see the marks happening in the film. She's wrenching my chest, and I was thinking, she's doing this for real. But I needed.
That was her going easy on me.
I needed to keep going, and she pulls the whip out, and she starts whipping, and you hear the smack. And I was marked for about a week. She whipped the shit out of me.
She did it to the other guy as well.
For them. I cut it, and I was like, Christ, I said fake. The other guy, there was another guy that's in it, he was my friend. he was acting in it and a filmmaker in it.
Still friends.
And,
that's good.
He was playing a Nazi officer, and I told her again. I said, do what you've got to do. I was going through the directing, but I was like, again, you don't have to do it for real. You don't have to really abuse him. I can add sound effects. We can do different shots. Anyway, the next thing, she's like throwing him on the floor. She's clawing him, and then I got the best shot of the film. His face comes into the corner of the film, and she turns around and whips, and the whip slapped him straight in the face. And I heard it hit right by me, and I heard him go, and it's real. That's not acting, but I kept going. When I eventually cut, I could see the mark, man. He was rough, and I said, "You all right?" And he goes, "I'll live."
Was there not a point when any of you wanted to just sort of suddenly, obviously break out character, say, "Stop! You're hurting me"?
I wanted to get the
They
footage.
do
Really.
it for the art.
I'm
Yeah,
used
stuff
to
for the
working
art,
with.
Rachel, exactly.
I'm used to working with these things, but looking back, yeah, the transition from it was an adult film, but I was obviously doing stuff like with the dominatrix, where obviously I'm like, because it's film, you don't have to really assault them, but
Yeah.
she was struggling to break that cycle of art and being a dom, and she was just domming us for real.
I think she had a great time.
No, I think she had a good time.
She looks quite fancy.
Do you mind if we have a quick break, guys? And I'll
Yes.
press pause. Okay, hello. We're back again. We just had a little break. Rachel has her friend there with her. We got Mina, the dog. Oh, Mina's so cute.
Very cuddly. Yeah,
How many dogs have you guys got?
2.
Two. Oh, who was the one last time who was quite noisy and when you're playing?
Yorkshire Terrier.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. So this is
She's
Mina.
lovely
She's a
on
lot
that.
more quiet and calmer. She's very cute.
She's lovely. She is noisy when she wants to be.
Oh no, she's very, very cute. So, Rachel, I was going to ask you, what's it like working with your partner? Does he get bossy with you, and or are you able to separate? Well, that's also a good question. Are you able to separate work from your personal life? Or
Yeah,
do
no,
you?
he's a very calm person to work with. He's very before he does anything, he's kind of has an idea of what he wants and what he wants to do, and we do talk about it beforehand as well. So especially if we're doing something big, I try and do as much prep work as possible with him. I'll go to charity shops and get some clothes, or I'll figure out what makeup to do, things like that. So we try and do as much as possible beforehand, because we're usually on really tight schedules. But actually working with him, yeah, he's very calm actually, and I just kind of try to read the situation and follow his lead and just kind of do all the stuff in between for him. So we do make a team, really, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's quite nice. Usually, I mean, a lot of the stuff we've done recently has been with other people. So he's been doing the filming for other people for their films. So it's a bit more relaxed because he's just sort of focusing on the filming and talking with the directors or the producers. But yeah, when we do his own stuff, I enjoy it. I think it's really fun. It's a whole new world, because I've always been interested in media and film. And when I was at school, no one told me that you could go to college and study this. Otherwise, I would have been in my element otherwise.
Yeah.
So learning from him, he's a very good teacher. He explains things really well. He explains things really well. And he puts up with all my million questions. Why do we do this? Why are we doing that? How do we do this? How's that going to work? Because I ask a lot of questions, and then any problems we try to problem solve together and just kind of get it done, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, because Jason did a BTEC media studies like me, didn't you? We spoke about this when we first. So you did the national diploma like me. Yeah, and I did it for 2 years. I know, but you did a GNVQ foundation, didn't you? And then you did it, I think.
I did a GMQ in media and a BTEC National Diploma in media and an AF in media.
Yeah, I did the BTEC too.
I have a national diploma in equine studies.
Yeah.
But I do have my level 1 and 2 for AutoCAD, and I'm doing my engineering degree.
Oh, awesome! That's really interesting.
But, that's kind of the career I fell into.
Yeah. Actually, Jason, I was going to ask Jason, Rachel, do you know of any porn stars that have gone into any successful careers after their porn, when they've completely left, other than working in the mainstream film industry? So ones that have gone and done something completely different.
Yeah, if you see the documentary Life After Porn, some of them have gone on to a bit of a different career change and have done it. Their past haunts them a bit, but they have broke away and moved on from a place, and so it can be done, and they have done it. Yeah.
There's one on YouTube, actually. He talks about games. He has his own channel, and he was in the original Louis Theroux porn episode from the Weird Weekends. JJ, that was his name. I don't know if you remember. but yeah, he wants his own sort. I think he's like an engineer or something like that now, and it's quite interesting because they still stay in contact a lot. And he was in the follow up that he did in like 2014 or whatever. And he was saying that actually he left the industry because he was really struggling to make a living afterwards when the transition between video and internet came out. And also he was saying that he went into it, which is quite tragic, because he lost his baby boy to a cot death. But at the time, he never said anything. He was just like, no, I just want to, because in the original episode of that documentary from the Weird Weekends, he was like, well, I just got released from the military. I could either go back there or I don't know what else to do. So this seems like the most, the easiest thing. It's like good money, he gets to sleep around and all this stuff from his perspective. But actually there was a lot more of a deeper meaning. And actually it's quite interesting because Jason, you were saying that there's a lot of them are very dark stories. You get a lot of ones that are very broken. And then you get ones
Yeah,
that are very comfortable and very happy with themselves. So, but on YouTube there are these like videos of like ex porn stars, and they talk about how the porn industry preys upon them, and especially when they're very vulnerable, at a very vulnerable way. Then I can imagine that would happen quite regularly.
yeah. I think the porn industry does
Definitely
prey
young
on
and naive.
vulnerable people. Yeah,
Yeah.
not
Really?
naive people, and that is a
Especially young
common thing.
adults who haven't
Yeah, but
experienced.
I was gonna say that because can you imagine when we were talking about this earlier, as a 20-year-old, well, you're just an idiot, really. Do you know what I mean? In your 20s, you basically you're a child. You still have your brain hasn't still, developed or grown. So you can imagine, it would be exciting, especially when you're seeing the glamorous side and the money side and how much money you get in a short period of time, etc. And then so they're just kind of thinking about the moment. They don't think about the consequences or what would happen when much later in life, when maybe they want to have a family, etc. And then this kind of brings us back to what we're talking about, that they're kind of haunted by their past because they don't think about that. And you wouldn't, would you, in your 20s? You're not in that frame of mind. You're not thinking like, in the future, what would happen if this happens? So you can imagine that actually they would prey upon very vulnerable ones, especially when they're young as well. And I imagine that would happen quite a lot. Does that happen a lot then?
Yeah, a lot of they do search for. There are places that do search for vulnerable, naive people and sucker them in and promise them. I mean,
glamour,
I
big
suppose you
money.
could class it as a bit of grooming, really.
Yeah. And I guess if they're from sort of broken family situations, then in a way they're kind of like a family in itself, don't they? Like, I mean, Boogie Nights is a very good example of that because they're very strange. And I spoke about this to one of the female filmmakers ages ago. That they're all kind of in that film, they're quite sort of estranged from their families, but they all kind of quite a good family unit. Do you know what I mean? It's a bizarre family unit community between them. So they all kind of look out for themselves. I can imagine, was that quite a common thing in the 70s as well? And would that happen as much now, or probably not so much now?
I can imagine it being quite cutthroat.
It's a bit. I think it is more cutthroat. It was cutthroat back in the day. But I think it's more so now. I don't think there's so many like groups and family dynamics anymore. It is kind of more churning in and out.
Fighting for roles as well.
It is competitive. I mean, some of the people I've worked with, they have got their heads screwed on, and they know what they're doing, and they actually are quite businesslike, and they make the most out of the situation and gain the most. But I said it is one extreme to the other. You get a mixed bag of people and a mixed bag of situations, but you get that. I mean, I think the film industry in general is full of crazy people, and it attracts all sorts. And even in my line of work in indie film, there's a lot of backstabbing and cutthroatness and egos, and it's the same as the adult film world and even Hollywood. They're all the same, just on different levels and different scales. They're all the same. It's one big mixed industry. Even corporate videos and wedding videos have had the same thing. They're all like it. It's just that way, really.
My friend who's a photographer, because you were talking about this, he worked with a model or knows a model who's also in the adult industry. Some of them cross over quite a lot. It's not personally something I would want to ever do or feel comfortable do or would do myself. But there are models that do cross over. And that's just, because they're comfortable with it, but it's not something I would ever do myself. It's just too personal for me. But he said that she's embraced it in a way because she's very businesslike, and outside of her career, of her adult porn career, she actually goes around promoting safe sex. But actually, I think that's really noble. Is that a good way of saying it? That's actually quite a positive way to promote what she does in a way. Do you know what I mean? She's using it as an advantage and as a positive, not as like, oh, I can't let anyone know what I'm doing, on the side. Do you know what I mean? Which I find, quite humbled in a strange way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that is, because there is there is the argument, isn't there, that porn films, particularly now, some people don't understand that they're very fake. The situations are very fake, and then a younger generation of watching them and getting confused and trying to reenact this, and it's actually very fake
and not being very safe.
Yeah.
No, and also that's an interesting perspective because we could talk about this, but then you think about it in school, they don't really talk about. When I was at school, it was like in science we talked about the actual science, the science side of sexual reproduction,
functions and anatomy.
But you don't learn about relationships and so as a young person you can imagine, especially as a teenager, there's all this stuff, and we're lucky because we never had to deal with that stuff, did we? We didn't have the internet and all that kind of stuff. So I'd imagine that would be very confusing, and if they're not being taught it, then they're going to copy things, aren't they? And then, like you said, it might not be safe, etc. It's not realistic, it's it's just not real life. And actually, that's another interesting take, that porn isn't real life, is it? They're selling fantasy, really.
I did see a documentary not too long ago about that, about the younger generations, one becoming addicted to porn and not being able to have any kind of relationship from a young age,
which is really interesting.
And they're not just watching porn, but they're watching like the dark side of porn.
Oh, really?
And which means they can't have a healthy
relationship,
what we call a vanilla relationship, because they're into really weird stuff. So it changes the brain chemistry when you get into that too young.
And also they're going to expect that's normal. Do you know what I mean? And then they can
that point 2 would be that they have an unrealistic expectation of sex and also of how men and women are supposed to look, because porn is a very extreme, the women have big boobs, tiny waists and perfect everything, and usually no body hair, and then the men are usually again no body hair and have these ginormous parts, and it's very unrealistic. So boys get very insecure and they expect girls to be a certain way and vice versa, and it does, because it's so easily accessible. It is a new generation of issues that they've not had to deal with before. So there is it's hard, especially as a parent as well, because you don't want to be that person that's like, oh no, you can't do that, it's taboo, it's horrible, it's naughty, it's nasty. But at the same time, you do want them to understand real life and have real expectations, and obviously not go down that dark hole of
and also, like you said, how to interact on a normal basis and respect the other person's wishes. Do you know what I mean? But
there is some very dark stuff out there.
But that's scary, isn't it? Because they're not being talked about. They're not being told at school, taught about, that everything's consented and etc.
I think too many people, especially parents, shy away from it, because at the end of the day, it is supposed to be entertainment or art, or there are excellent aspects to it, like the parodies. They're really fun and silly, and you get all the good stuff mixed in with the horror film aspect and the sex and all that. So that there are good sides to it, and then you also have the dark sides to it with
Yeah.
the extreme pornography and all
But that's
the
very dangerous, though, especially for teenagers to be accessing, isn't it? Because that's a very, especially the teenage, in the adolescent years, that's a very
even as
good.
an adult, I've seen things that I probably should never see.
Really?
No, I stick to the fun
Is
side.
that my fault?
Yeah.
No, it's not your fault.
Yeah. But yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the dark side of porn as well. Actually, I was going to ask you both question. Can you think of examples where films have been influenced by porn films, or where, well, we talked about porn films parodying mainstream films. So I guess what I'm saying is, can you think of it from the other perspective where, like, mainstream Hollywood films or just in general films have actually been influenced by porn communities? So we spoke about Boogie Nights, that's one. What was the other one? Larry Flint against, I remember, was it Larry Flint against the rest of the world or something?
Yeah.
Was Larry
I mean,
Flint a real person?
yeah.
What happened then? So they obviously did the film, and I think Courtney Love was in it, and Woody Harrelson.
That was a scandal. That's based on a scandal. As I said, there is the film Lovelace, but that's a biographical film.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, what's her face? Yes, there've been quite a few of them, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean that comes in the biographical in more than homaging, but then you do get like the latest one I've seen, the film X, is it was inspired by a
was
70s
great.
porn film because it is
Yeah.
used as a backdrop. So that's took influence from that golden age of porn for sure. And there's a few exploitation films that have took reference to golden age porn in their approach. But then you've got on a bigger scale, you've got the film Sex Tape with Cameron Diaz in, which
That was a surprisingly good film.
is a comedy, but it is using the porn film as a background.
Zack and Miri Make a Porno. That's another one that's
Pardon?
about Zack and Miri Make a Porno.
Oh, I don't know that one.
It's about two best friends who
Oh yeah.
they make a porn film. They get like some people in to make a porn film and they end up falling in love, which is really weird. But that's another one. But the one that I wanted to mention, Gaspar Noé's Love.
Well, yeah, there's
and 7 songs.
There is in modern times of art house, there has been the crossover of porn versus art, where especially with world cinema, like Lars von Trier's films and Gaspar Noé's films, they actually have pornographic stuff happening in a mainstream film, which
I mean, Love
has been released. So it's that's a whole new
Nymphomaniac was a big one, wasn't it? That was that caused a lot of his films are controversial, but that one was quite.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean,
out there.
He's daring. I love Lars von Trier.
I can imagine he would upset a lot of people.
Yeah, I like Dog Me 95, which is the movement that he was part of setting up. But he broke his own rules. He made the film The Idiots in 1988, and I actually saw that in film appreciation at college. And there is a gangbang scene in that, and they removed the actors. Well, it's an orgy gangbang, but they removed the actors and they brought in porn doubles, which broke the Dog Me 95 rules. And he shot close ups, and it's actual triple X footage that actually got released. But then the PBFC and the argument from the censors that it was such an important moment to the film because the characters' relationship broke down after that they justified it being included as part of the film. So, and then since then, I've seen quite a lot of this with Gaspar Noé and Lars von Trier doing it more often, and Michael Winterbottom, who did 7 songs.
Yeah, 7 songs is a very pornographic film, but it's considered a film because it's not gratuitous porn. Gratuitous porn.
Yeah.
More, it is integral to the story. It's like a love story.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know that film. Is it quite recent?
9 songs is good. It is fairly recent. It's in the noughties.
Okay.
I think the argument now on censorship with it like porn versus censorship is if a filmmaker can justify it being important parts of the story, they allow things to now, because it used to be very strict. The BBFC were like, no, women there, and that's it. But that has been blurred a bit because there are films that have actually
it's considered artistic.
Yes.
Getting more liberal, but sexual violence is still a no-go. Like, I Spit on Your Grave, the original is still cut.
Sex and violence is still taboo, but sex and art considered
that's
okay.
Different.
Battle in Heaven.
Yeah.
Battle in Heaven is actually real sex between the actors and actresses.
Well, there's a few films like that.
What's that? Who's in that, or who directed that?
It's a Mexican film.
It's a Mexican film. I can't remember the director's name. Can you?
Well, it's Tartan released it. It was a Tartan video release.
So essentially, the director's not a fan of porn. He thinks because of the unrealistic standards of the intimacy involved in porn, he's not a fan of it. He wanted to portray real sex, real intimacy in real settings. So it's not very glamorous.
No,
kind of. You have a bit of the awkwardness in there, and there's some very interesting shots of.
That's interesting.
It's hard to explain without watching it, but it's.
No, I can understand. He wanted to capture the actual side of.
But it's not lovey-dovey either. It's not glamorous at all. It's not even nice. It's just realistic.
Well, it's realism.
It's raw. It's like realistic, raw. But the actress and the actor actually had sex in scenes, and it's we watched the behind the scenes on it, didn't we? And it was really interesting to see. But again, that's considered artistic.
Because a lot of those, for instance, a lot of 18 films, when there's a sex scene, for instance, they're not actually really having sex. They're basically there's ways around it. So I'm quite.
Well, the director battling heavily. So he said the thing, in films you always see the woman has the sheet draped over her.
Yeah, or the man they have these fur patches, don't they?
And it's it's always very strategically covered, and he hates that because it's not realistic.
No.
So he wanted to portray realism in his film.
And I guess to show the real vulnerability.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. Yeah. And there's sort of close-ups of after they have sex, and there's close-ups of both the genitals and how, and it's hard. You'd have to watch it to see it, but
but I can understand that it's quite. I mean, in a general setting, it's very vulnerable, and it's between people with nobody around. So it's between two people. So I can imagine that would be quite an interesting perspective for a filmmaker to do, because he doesn't want to capture the side, like porn does. Porn's just there to, it's like just selling fantasy or bringing money, but it's not like we were talking about earlier, showing real life, is it? So not the real intimacy between a couple, or the vulnerability, that awkwardness and vulnerability of, being naked with each other, etc., etc. So that is quite an interesting. Was that quite hard for you to watch, Rachel, knowing that
it worked in the film? It certainly, the way the film is done and portrayed, it was never awkward to watch. It was realistic to watch, especially because obviously we don't shy away from that stuff anyway. Sex is a part of life, nudity is a part of life.
Yeah.
So we watch a lot of world cinema and things like that anyway, and which have far more nudity than British films and American films. So no, it really worked. I really enjoyed Battle in Heaven. I thought it was a fantastic film, and I think that's why I like Lars von Trier as well, because Nymphomaniac is a very raw, realistic depiction of a lot of things.
Well, she's a nymphomaniac, isn't it? She's got sex addiction, so it's actually it's going into, like you said, the rawness of actually having this addiction. It's not about the pleasure of sex.
The actress, I think, is phenomenal as well, because she was in Antichrist.
The older one or the young one? Because there were two.
Older one, Charlotte.
The older one, yeah.
Because she's in Antichrist as well. That's quite a graphic film.
Yeah.
And sex. But there's a good portion of the film where she's just walking around with no trousers on, and the camera doesn't shy away from anything.
Yeah.
Because you know, of the scenes that are going on. She keeps having sex with her husband, and she's having problems, and because her son died when they were having sex.
Yeah.
So yeah, she spends a good portion of the film like running around with just a t-shirt on and no
Yeah,
bottoms on.
yeah.
And I'm like, why is she never wearing any trousers?
No.
But it works for the film.
Well,
Because
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
yeah, it's
it's
realistic.
shot
And
like
actually, it's
She's
funny
with
because,
her husband. She has no
yeah,
reason to
yeah,
go and put trousers on. You know, they've been
yeah.
married for years.
It's
So
really
yeah,
interesting that we touched upon the sex addiction, because that's a big taboo, isn't it? Like, and I just remember that film. What was that film with Michael Fassbender? Shame. That was a really good one.
yeah,
I don't think I've seen that one.
Have you
yeah.
not? It starts off. It's a full-on frontal from Michael Fassbender, and it got. Do you remember? It had its own website and everything. It was on Twitter and Instagram. Like, you know, just quite impressive.
I think people have never
But it's
seen
not.
a
It's not like a romantic film. It's definitely like, you know. It's kind of touched upon that him and his sister were perhaps abused. It's never actually mentioned, but you kind of get, there's a very strange dynamic between the sister and the brother of Michael Fassbender and Kerry Mulligan, I think. That not them personally, but maybe they were by their parents. You don't know, but they have a very strange interaction, and he's very well, what they say is that he's imploding where she's exploding. So she's very kind of like, you know, dramatic, and, you know, when she's upset, she'll basically shout it out and her hands are. He's kind of like, it's all kind of repressed. And you kind of see this journey of you know, how far he goes, and how actually this addiction is taking its toll on you, like anything else, like, you know, like if you're an
Well, yeah,
alcoholic.
they say it becomes an addiction when it starts to affect your actual life.
Well, that's it.
There's a
And I was going to
yeah,
say that's quite
like
difficult.
people drink and they're not addicted to alcohol because it doesn't affect their life negatively.
No.
But when it starts to, and the same with sex, you know, people can have as much sex as they want. If it doesn't affect your daily life, then it's enjoyable.
But
When
yeah.
it starts to affect your daily life and you can't function properly, that's when it becomes an addiction.
Yeah, I was going
So
to say, and that's quite difficult when you think about it, because sex is just a natural process in life. So
normally,
well, yeah, it's supposed to be enjoyable, right? So then I guess it gets to the point where sex addiction is actually, well, no, it's because you feel like you constantly need to fill this void, and it's like you said, it's
yeah,
overtaking your life. It's not enjoyable. It's horrible.
like any addiction, people have sex, take drugs, drink alcohol, or gamble to escape their reality,
Yeah, yeah.
trying to run away from whatever's happening and covering it up with substance or intimacy or gambling, and it's it it messes with the chemistry in the brain.
Mm,
So yeah, when it starts to affect you negatively, then yeah, it's an addiction and it's a
yeah,
problem. Which Nymphomaniac shows that so well.
yeah,
You know, her whole life falls apart, and because of her need to be intimate all the time,
yeah,
just relationship, and she almost loses a child, and
yeah.
yeah, so quite
Quite
bad. But yeah,
that's,
I have to watch that Fassbender one. That sounds interesting.
it is. It's not an easy film to watch, but it is a good watch to what you have to be in the right frame of. It's
Yeah,
along those lines. It's just like it's not an easy film to watch, but yeah, no, it is an interesting perspective, because I guess that's quite a taboo subject. You don't really see many mainstream films exploring sex addiction,
no,
do you? Really? So yeah, but it's quite interesting because you were talking about that, about, you know, the intimacy thing. Is that in the original Louis Theroux Weird Weekends porn episode, he talks to quite a few of the well-known sort of porn stars, and one's was Cheryl something. She was a very big one in the 70s, and she was saying that actually when a guy comes on to doing porn, he's very attentive and he's very nice, and then after doing a few of the films, he there's this kind of glazed look in his eyes where you're just basically a piece of meat, and it's very it must be very difficult because you realize that that's the moment where you're just nothing. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
There's
they
nothing.
switch off from it, don't they?
Pardon?
It's like switching off.
Yeah. But then
Again,
that,
there's no real pleasure in it. It's a job.
yeah, but then in real life, then that would cause problems, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah.
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 So it's,
Separate work.
Yeah.
Work from a
yeah,
personal life.
yeah, yeah. No, it is really interesting, and I find that actually, I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but I tend to think that pop culture or popular culture, or like in our society, tends to be inspired by porn culture. Does that make sense? For instance, like this the thing where women are supposed to be seen as being shaved or waxed, for instance. That seems to be like, just the normal now in normal society. Does that make sense? It's these little things that
Yeah,
seem to be
yeah.
sort of niches that seem to have sort of come from there into normal everyday living. Does that make sense? I don't know how to explain that. There's
Porn's quite influential. It can be
Yeah.
influential on it
yeah,
and
yeah,
create trends, and it's it is impactful, very impactful, which is
yeah.
what's scared some people.
Actually, do you reckon that since when all the breast implants and that happened, do you reckon the ratings, not ratings, but do you reckon there was a sudden surge in women having boob jobs and things like that? Without
I think
getting,
there has
Yeah, it
been
was, yeah.
when there has been certain icons that have done it, and especially in the 90s when there was Euro trash
oh,
and
I
like
know.
Pamela Anderson and stuff. I think it was a bit of a trend, and it did spike people wanting, as you say, it makes sometimes people feel self-conscious and
Yeah,
they want to hit the high that they're seeing. But again, I said it's fake, but they're chasing a dream really. But
yeah.
it is quite sad in some ways.
It is. It is. Is there anything, Rachel? You've been quite quiet. Is there anything you want to say about anything with the porn industry, or you wanted to touch upon?
No, not really. I mean, I'm quite an open-minded individual. Um, I appreciate art in all its forms, or I try to. I do have a certain amount of respect for people that can do that and do it well. I mean, I find it entertaining, certainly. I'm quite a well, I'm quite an unusual person myself anyway. But and I do like it as a form of art and entertainment. I really enjoy a lot of the sides of it. And I have fascinations and questions about all sorts of different, like I like to talk about the psychology of it and the impacts of it and all that sort of stuff, and
Yeah.
I've had fun conversations about these
Well, I
things. And
think that's the bit that interests me the most about the industry is the psychological and what really goes on behind the scenes. Because we see what's on the screen or on the TV or what's supposed to be, but we don't actually realize what kind of person it takes and what's going on behind, and maybe the inner conflict, like we we're talking about how there's men, straight men doing gay for pay and all that kind of thing. I'm just wondering, for instance, just as a generalization, the higher you go or the more riskier the fetish or level of sexual violence goes, I'd imagine that they'd get paid more, would they? Is that how it works? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that is true.
Really?
The more extreme, then yeah, you are talking
you get
a bigger
hazard
payout.
pay.
No,
Yeah.
you can charge more for a certain area, or if you're doing extreme or fetish, because
Wow.
you
So
become a specialist of something.
yeah, but then that you would really have to be headstrong in order to be able to do that, wouldn't you? Because that would really mess you up if you weren't ready.
I do think there is a portion of people that do enjoy that side of it.
Fair enough.
I mean,
Yes.
I've
Oh yeah, the
seen,
people I've worked with love their job. They love
yeah,
it, and they really do
I,
enjoy it.
I think those that are very good at the extreme sides of it probably do it because they like it more than they do for money. You can only do something for so long for money
Yeah.
before it becomes too much. So I do think there are people that enjoy that side of it, or at least enjoy their job and doing
Yeah.
that side of it for entertainment. I mean, I do wonder how much of it is really real. I know there is some extreme stuff out there, but I do think some of it is played. faked to a point. And some of it is real. I suppose it depends which sites you're looking at, really.
Yeah.
But I do find it funny. I've seen documentaries before about men and women that do the extreme side, like the BDSM and the real hardcore pain, pleasure, scenes, that sort of stuff. And they always do the after interviews of the women, just so people know that they're okay. And you have these little women sat there just like chatting away, like, oh yeah, that was so much fun, I really enjoyed it. And it's just like, but did you though? Or did
Yeah.
you get paid lots of money to do that? So yeah, I do
Yeah,
want
yeah.
bits and pieces. I do like a documentary. I've seen a fair few of them.
But actually, that's quite. I was thinking because as you were saying, on those extreme ones, then there would be lots of injuries, wouldn't there? Because you hear about stories about how
But one would
people go to
assume
hospital.
they would take precautions and do. There is a safe way to do things.
Okay.
You wouldn't put someone. Well, ideally, in the right setting, you wouldn't put a novice in a situation where they might get hurt because they don't know what they're doing.
Mm.
So generally, with those kinds of scenes, they should really know what they're doing. There are certain ways, especially like in the kink community, there are certain rules and things and ways to do things.
Yeah.
Minimize danger and risk, because it is supposed to be about pleasure and entertainment more than injury and damage. But I'm
Actually,
sure
that's a good question. I was going to ask: would there always be a lawyer, not a lawyer, but someone who's in charge of the legal stuff? What do you know what I mean on set? So does that make sense? Like, because I remember in the Louis Theroux episode, the first one, the Weird Weekends, when he went to visit one of the studios, one of the guys in the office was actually the not a lawyer, but he was their legal advisor. That's what I'm trying to say. So would there be a legal advisor on set, or
On the big ones, but on a lot of them,
not
no.
on the small
No.
ones.
Well, even on the middle range ones, only the elite top, really. Not most of the stuff. No.
No?
It's quite a sheltered little one, and
Yeah.
there's not loads on it. They're sort of closed sets. You only have the kind of necessity people there, really.
Yeah. I find
It's-
it really interesting, Jason, that you touched upon in one of our other episodes that when an adult film is taking place, there will always be cameras filming for the soft side of it and then for the hard side of it. I didn't actually realize that happened. Would that be on all the films in general? Do they, and then they try and get 2 videos or 2 films out of one shoot, basically? Which is,
on most, it used to be standard practice because the internet wasn't such a thing. It was just like with the soft, you can release it pretty much everywhere, and it won't have any problems. You can make money. And then the hard one is you're more expensive to buy, but very more limited, restricted where you can get it from. Now with the internet, it's they go straight for hard, but the soft version is still useful because you can put it on more streaming sites and VOD. It's kind of more legit, and it's not going to get you into such hot water.
yeah.
And you kind of get 2 for the price of 1 films then as well. So
Would the big like with the big porn stars, would they happen to get royalties for anything? Like, where's mainstream?
very
Would that
mixed.
happen?
Some would if they did a deal. You might get the bigger stars, but again, most of the time, no. They'll be paid for the day. Their day
Yeah, on
rate.
the contract.
They're hired in and out. That's it, in and out. But there are exceptions because there are some people that know people, work up or cut deals.
I would imagine the more experienced ones would ask for like producer credits and things like that.
Yeah. But I'd imagine like for most actors, like, when I get auditions or self tapes, they come up, it says, paid, da, 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 da. So you'd get paid on for the actual job, and it's separate.
Most of them just get paid for the work on the
Yeah. Whereas
they don't keep the royalties for as it's a studio, really.
Yeah. But actually, that's an interesting point because I was talking to my sisters about it. Is that this is going on at the moment in mainstream cinema, where the problem is because since COVID, nobody's been going to the cinema. They've been releasing everything on Netflix. So for instance, I think there has been a case recently with Tom Cruise, and I think one of the Mission Impossible films or something else, I can't remember, where he wanted it released in cinema first, because otherwise, if it's released onto Netflix, he doesn't get any of the money. It goes straight to the studio, even though, do you know what I mean? As the star. So I'm wondering if that would also happen in the porn, but then also they've got the internet side, so I guess it's a bit different. I don't know.
Yeah,
It gets
the
quite complicated, I think, because in their contract they'll say, you know, they'll get revenues from the cinema that comes back, and then the rest that go when it goes onto Netflix, it will go, you know, all the money from Netflix will go to the studio, or you know.
the porn films just they'll release as best they can. With the mainstream, the reason the cinema's taking a hit on them is because the royalty share is a big deal to studios. Like Tom Cruise produces the
Yeah,
Mission
yeah,
Impossible now. Netflix is a good deal, but it's like a one-off payment, like license. Whereas cinema is ticket sales. That's what happened with Scarlett Johansson with her
yeah,
Black Widow. Is when it comes out on the digital platform, it's kind of a set fee, and they feel like they're losing royalties because they're not getting that box office takings. But the box office takings aren't amazing anyway because cinema's changing.
yeah,
I mean, I was talking to a film group the other day, a younger group, because I teach filmmaking as well and work with groups. And the younger audience aren't really going to the cinema anymore. They actually are streaming, and
yeah,
the big box office days I think are a little bit different now anyway. Because
yeah.
uh,
I haven't been to the cinema in God knows how many years, but like, I mean, my sister was trying to explain to my 4-year-old nephew that, you know, in our day we didn't have the internet, so for them it's really bizarre, a really bizarre notion just to be able to turn on TV and have, you know, flick through all these things and have so many choices on Netflix and stuff. We didn't have that. We just had like 4 channels, and whatever came on, we watch it. Do you know what I mean? So, or we had the Radio Times, and then that told us. So it must be, yeah, for them. It's just like it's quite sad actually how the cinema has died out in a way. But like I was going to say, you know, have you ever seen the film Taxi Driver?
yeah,
Robert De Niro, and there's like a scene because he's like an insomniac. He goes to watch these dirty films, doesn't he? Like these porn
go to the
films.
pub, yeah,
And then he realised, oh, it's because he's an insomniac and he just doesn't know what to do with himself anymore. So he just goes and
Yeah,
sits.
and they're open to them, aren't they?
yeah.
Were they quite popular then, those adult theatres in?
In America, I mean, again, the UK is more prudish,
They never
but
had them.
well, it's interesting because in America, well, in London, he goes into the porn theatre in London, but they're not really quite as big as what they were in America. But John Landis, the director's American, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you think about it, that's not completely. He's kind of doing an American idea in London, but you know, it's quite funny because it was a real thing in the States. Again,
Yeah.
not so much now because the internet and home media's kind of killed that a bit.
Yeah.
But
And also
society
more laws have
changed
come
a
into
bit.
place and stuff. So
I think attitudes have changed a bit towards it, and people look at it as the old grimy, gritty exploitation grindhouse days. But
yeah.
it's, you know, it's a bit. Times have changed a lot in quite a short space of time, like the attitudes and everything. So
Yeah.
it's interesting how it
No, it is
changes fast.
interesting.
Like I was talking to a film group about film, saying celluloid to video to digital video to like HD to 4K. That's all happening quite, you know, you're only talking a few
Very short,
decades. That's a short space of time for such a lot of change to go on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Wait, like, actually, here's a good question for you. When did the first porn film ever come out? Or,
Well,
One's been around.
you know, the
Whole
history behind it. When would it actually started on film?
yeah, no, film. The first time film was invented kind of comes from porn. The first moving images created were the peep shows. So when you used to put some money in and look at the peep shows and reel it, and it showed like a woman undressing, that was the first stuff to film. So porn is responsible for film. Yeah, porn came first.
I actually have
Literally.
a really nice book that Jason bought me, which is vintage erotica, like vintage porn photography. And I tell you what, it's really, really nice. There's some of the old style with the old clothes and the old body images and things. It's actually quite interesting to see. But
Yeah.
go back to the
It was the
early
start. The
1900s.
first stuff I did it in film studies back when it was the first stuff
I'm
created.
gonna look it up.
Because the hang on, because I remember when I was like 25, I went to, let me check. So I went to Lyon and visited my cousins there, and there's I think it's the Lumiere brothers. Hang on, Lumiere, and they were the ones that first invented film or light or photography. Can't remember what it was exactly. And that was the very, 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 very first film was something like, I don't know, I think it was like a man walking down the street or something.
Yeah, they shot the train coming towards the camera, and they
That
put
was
it in
it. That was it. That was it.
and it scared the life out of people because they thought the train was going to come at
Oh,
them.
did they? So that was the original.
That was the first like cinema screening and like first something shot and put on it.
So was that the very first thing that came out, and then I guess then afterwards it was.
Well, but just before that was the little like you put your quarters, you look at the peep show. So that was the movie. That was the first. And then it led to actually shooting on the Folex film of a train.
So I looked
isn't it
this
interesting?
I'm curious, and I've checked this. So the very first porn movie ever made was 1896.
Wow.
And it was a woman doing a striptease in the bathroom. So yeah, it was 1896.
And when was the very first film or just anything footage scene that was like the train one, I think?
The first film I ever made, it was the train, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was the one in France. Remember, there's a museum, the Lumiere.
Well, if you want to get really technical, the Roundhay Garden scene from 1888. That's the scene with the jockey and the horse, and you wind it up. And
that was like.
Is it that thing that goes round? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the early technology. That was when
it
was starting to discover moving image.
Because remember, there used to be that cinema on. I don't know if you know. Oh no, in London there used to be the cinema on this theatre. Sorry, this museum even.
And then 1896 was the
on
train.
South Bank called the Museum of Moving Image, which we used to love as kids. And it talks about the history of cinema and where it started and how it progressed, etc. But yeah, as Jason said, they had like the very first one, which was like I don't know how to describe it. It was like a circle thing, and they're like little photos,
like still images that, when moved, appear to be moving.
you spin it and it goes like it looks like film, really.
Yeah, that's how they came up with it. But no, the actual first film was The Train in 1896.
Same year as they shot the porn.
Yeah.
So straight away, as I say, porn has always been onto it. As soon as something happens,
so that came out first, The Train, and then the porn came out
in the same year.
Yeah. So what was first?
the train was the first.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
There is no difference in it, and followed by that, and it was the peep show films. They are.
That's really interesting, though.
But they used to shoot through doorways, and it was done as if you're watching a peep show. That was their kind of fetish almost. That was the first time.
Yeah. And I imagine at that time that would have been very, very taboo and very kind of.
Voyeurism's always been a thing, and it started out as voyeurism, and there's still that today. Really, they even do categories of voyeurism films.
Yeah. No, it is really interesting. I think we've pretty much. What are you looking at, Rachel?
Going off into the ether of film.
No, it is really interesting. Like, you do wonder what came first, and what.
Well, I just saw a very brief clip that the Horse in Motion classic from 1888.
Yeah,
it was actually I remember this because I did look this up before, but the whole reason behind it was because somebody surnamed Stanford wanted to know if when a horse trots, all 4 feet were off the ground at any time.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yes.
So he did a stop motion of still images to discover if this happened or not.
And so, does it?
And that's how it started. Huh?
Does it happen then that all the feet come off the ground at one point? Yeah.
Yeah, they do. In most of the hoods. So well, no, in with the trot, it's 2 feet on the ground at any one time. But
Okay.
there is like a brief motion in between, very, very
Yeah,
briefly.
yeah.
But yeah, that's why they did that. The horse in motion.
Yeah. No, it is interesting. Oh, actually, I know it sounds really bizarre, but because we're talking about how, like, in the porn and sex and all that kind of stuff, it goes back way, way back, doesn't it? Like, you think about, I just thought about all of a sudden Pompeii just clicked into mind. Like, there were those well-known, what do you call it, brothels, weren't there? And apparently you walk in
Well,
and
I mean,
there's images,
Old,
and they
old,
just go in and pick one.
yeah, look at the Kama Sutra. That's been around
no,
for
the
hundreds of
the oldest
years.
trade is prostitution.
Yeah.
That is the oldest.
Yeah.
Humans have always been obsessed with sex, I think.
And
I think that's
the female
just
form. But yeah, no, it is interesting. Like, I mean, I've never gone, and I really want to. I'll be interested. But there's like, you can go visit the remains of Pompeii, and you still get these like places, these brothels we walk in, and you have like, I guess it's kind of like the McDonald's of their day, where they just go and. And so all the pictures were around, and obviously the sailors were coming in, and they didn't speak the language, so all they needed to do was point at what positions they want. So in a way, that's kind of like a weird way of doing. That's a weird film, I mean, it's all there for them. But yeah, oh dear. So yeah, it goes way, way back. So yeah, and you do hear some stories, don't you, about how the Romans used to use. It was on QI. Apparently, the ancient Romans used to use loaves of bread as dildos. Apparently.
Wow. A loaf of bread. Well, I suppose back then it was quite hard bread.
I think they were quite inventive. But anyway.
So when I was a teenager, I went to Amsterdam and we went to the History of Sex Museum.
Oh, did you?
And they had one of the oldest recorded sex toys, which was a ceramic dildo, basically. And it was in the museum, and it's like a smooth marble stone dildo, and it would have been used hundreds of years. They were quite popular.
Really?
Yeah, it was hundreds of years old, and that was proudly on display in the History of Sex Museum. Yeah, that was my idea of the group. Let's go to the History of Sex Museum with my very Christian, God-loving teacher who was a good sport. And
that's good.
Yeah, he was a very, very good teacher. He put up with a lot of crap from me as a little rebellious button pusher. I think that's why I got on so well with him. I used to make him blush all the time, but he took it like a champ, and we got to go to the museum. So
how old were you, Rachel?
Maybe 15.
Oh, okay.
15, 16? Maybe younger. Yeah, between 14 and 16, if I remember correctly. But yeah, no, it was great. I learned a lot that day. But we had fun, and even my teacher enjoyed it. He said it was very eye-opening experience.
Well, it would be interesting, wouldn't it? I mean,
but we were on a band tour, so it was only a small group of us, and we were all kind of quirky individuals. So yeah.
All right then. I think that's a good place to finish. Unless anyone wants to raise any other points or ask any questions or say anything.
I think we covered.
I think we have. Jason, when's your documentary coming out? That's a good way to end it.
Soon.
No, I'm hoping later this year. Hopefully, the end of this year.
So this is the very first documentary you've done on the porn industry, yeah?
Yeah.
And how long has it been in the making?
A few years. It has been a few. I shot it, and then there's been crazy stuff happening in COVID. And I have a project kept getting in the way that I had to finish. But
you did a Vipco, which was a big one.
Yeah, I ended up doing the Vipco documentary afterwards, and that took off, and I had to jump on that, and so now I've returned back to it.
It's one of those things. It's his own project, but other stuff keeps getting in the way.
Keep taking the back burner. I have a distributor interested, so I'm ready. I'm ready to go with it.
But then obviously you had the pre-production phase. So how long did that bit take before you actually?
That was a few months, but
okay.
It's been an ongoing battle.
So who are you talking to about what you can show and what you can't show? Is that the distributor?
I'm doing a safe version, which I know would easily pass, and
Okay.
I may do an uncut one for fun because of some of the footage I've been given, but we'll see.
Yeah. Oh, well, it'll be interesting. No, I'd have to try and watch the cut version and see if I can tolerate it. We'll see. Well, I never say never. But because it's your work, I might give it a go. Just to show support as a friend.
Yeah.
And then I might be traumatized afterwards. Anyway, anyone want to say or raise before we go? I think that's a good way to.
Yeah, that's good. I think.
Yeah.
All good? Yeah, I think everyone's getting tired as well, and I'm up early, so. All right, well, thank you guys for joining. It's been nice talking to you. It's been ages. So I think the last one we did was 4 hours. God, that was the Valentine's Day. It was like over 4 hours. And my sister went, Sonia, it's over 4 hours. I know. We're like having so much fun talking. We lost track of time. It's like,
yeah, we all get carried away.
yeah, it's all right. And they can, stop and pause and continue whenever they want. It's on Spotify. So. So
I was
okay.
in the house listening to it. I was in the shower listening to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's always good. It's good to do when you're doing your house chores or when you're driving or doing boring food shopping and things like that. Passes the time, and it's like having some good banter in the background. So anyway, all right. So I think that's a good way to finish it, really. So should we say goodbye one at a time, or anyone want to say anything? Jason, do you want to say anything?
No, thanks for listening, and look out for Life of Fetish. Hopefully landing later this year, but definitely coming soon. Definitely coming out.
We'll look out for that. Rachel, anything you want to say before you say goodbye?
No, I think I say enough. So
Okay.
Walk all day, so.
All right, I'll let you guys go because it's late. All right, thank you, Rachel and Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And hopefully I'll have you back soon sometime.
Yay.
Okay, bye.
Bye.